So there's a old adage that people sometimes can't change or won't change. But what's been your experience? Can people that have been abusive, can they change that pattern?
They can. We know that a person who exhibits battering type behavior, we know that it's learned behavior. Always think about, you're a product of where you came from. So in order for there to be changes, people have to be willing to change. But you also have to be in a position and ready to know that there are new ways to handle situations and that those services are out there. We at Avanzar have our Fathers Ending Abuse program, which works with individuals. It's a battering intervention program where individuals who have been identified as being a perpetrator of violence in a relationship can learn those new skills. It takes time. You didn't get to where you are overnight. Mm-hmm. So to be consciously aware that your behavior affects another individual in some way, whether it's physical, emotional, or psychological, even sexual. It's really learning to be accountable for your behavior, but also being ready to want to make those changes and to understand there are alternative ways that you can deal with your frustrations and not have to be controlling in your behavior to the point where you're using more physical things or more emotional type behaviors.
So it's almost as if there needs to be resources readily available for victims, but also for offenders, because a lot of times it needs to be a joint effort.
Yes.
For supports for both.
And that's one of the things that we try to do. We're visible in most of the courts in Atlantic County, our municipal courts as well as our superior courts, and that is the information we bring to those courts as well. In the municipal courts, we bring and we try to touch base with both parties. We want individuals to walk out with information to know what's available to them. And it's just as important for the person who's been charged to walk out and know there's a resource available to them and begin that dialogue. We do the same thing for a victim to make sure they're walking out with information as well. The courts are set up to be able to require, individuals. They can make those suggestions to the person being charged. Mm-hmm. However, the way the system's set up, they can't make a victim do something, but we can certainly strongly encourage a victim to seek supports as well. Okay. Because again, it is important if you're going to remain as a couple in some way, whether it's dating or if it's married and you have children, that you have to learn how do we do this together where we're not using violence is not coming into our home.
Okay. Let's talk about warning signs.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any potential warning signs for an abuser, for instance?
Well, I think that controlling behavior is number one. Many times it's not so much the victim that recognizes them right away, but it is their friends, their relatives that recognize those controlling behaviors. Again, not wanting someone to see their friends, trying to isolate them from family and friends. Again, using derogatory, usually verbal things are the first things people notice in an abusive relationship. And it's really just how someone talks to another individual. Okay. That sometimes is the first signs. Sometimes victims don't recognize that because they just think that's how the person is. So they just kind of get used to it because it's normal for them. But that's usually the beginning stage. Physical things are not always what we see first in an abusive relationship. It's usually the underlying verbal, more psychological type things that a batterer or an individual who is the aggressor. Okay. We will notice those things first.
And in terms of the viewers that would be watching this, mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
If they know someone that is potentially a victim, mm-hmm. or even if they know somebody the complete opposite, that they see that maybe their best friend or mm-hmm. a family member is actually the abuser. Mm-hmm. What are some things that they can do to be able to support them?
Okay. That we have, the Avanzar has a 24-hour hotline available where individuals can call. Even if you're a friend, you're a relative, and you just are looking for support about what you have viewed with this friend or a relative, there's someone at the hotline that can validate what you have seen. It depends on what it is you're calling in to say is really going on. We don't have mandatory reporting for family members as we do with child abuse and neglect. However, people can get validation for what they have observed and what they're feeling. You don't have to be a victim to be the only ones to use a hotline.
Okay.
You can call the police if you have a sense something's going on and you're kind of concerned about something. You know, police in our state have requirements they have to do. You can ask for a brochure. You could subtly leave something. You know, sometimes I've had people call the hotline who it's a coworker. They don't know how to approach it. I said, well, you get one of our brochures, just casually leave it on the desk.
Okay.
So then with the hotline number on it in the services, again, our services are there 24/7, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So there is someone available to be able to answer questions, to give other resources, referrals, and to help support whomever is the one calling.
Okay. So I know that you have plenty of resources available. Let's take it the next step. So somebody does call. What would that look like? You know, what would they go through? So, and especially for, let's say, a victim, what would those steps look like?
First, the hotline would certainly want to ensure that the victim is somewhere safe.
Okay.
They are, if it's the victim calling, but even if it's not the victim, they're going to ensure whoever that caller is, they're safe wherever they are. That's the first thing, making sure that person's safe. The second part will also be to reassure that individual everything is confidential unless, certainly we are mandatory reporters like many social service for some things. If, however, it's not in reference to homicide, suicide, child abuse and neglect, and at times elderly abuse, then we don't have to report it, you know, but if people were to report that's what's going on, we have to call someone else as well. If the caller is expressing that they believe they want to come in for counseling, the hotline's going to do an intake. From that intake, they will set them up with an appointment. However, there are times when people want to remain anonymous, they don't want to give their name, and they're not ready to come in, and that's okay too. The hotline can offer them phone support around what they're experiencing.
Okay.
Giving, and the biggest emphasis being on that safety planning. We want to make sure that any caller who disengages a call with us is getting safety planning so that they at least have something available to them.
Okay. So safety first, plans then next.
Yes.
And of course, face-to-face opportunities.
Yes.
Should a victim potentially desire.
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for the work that
thank you.
you do. I know it's been quite a few years for servicing
Right.
you know, our community, and thank you for partnering also with the HT schools.
No, thank you, and thank you for inviting us.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.